Chrysta Bairre is a career coach, speaker, author, and founder of Live, Love, Work. Chrysta works with successful mid-career professionals and service-based entrepreneurs who want more from life and career. Chrysta's clients increase their professional impact and income so they work smarter and make more money and find happiness in and out of their office. Chrysta has spoken at Ignite Denver and Ignite Fort Collins, presented at Boulder Startup Week, Fort Collins Startup Week, Colorado State University, East Colorado SBDC, Aurora Chamber of Commerce, and more than 50 other events. She knows her stuff. Chrysta is also the founder of She Leads, which is a free women's leadership group for professional women in northern Colorado. She is a 2016 and 2017 participant and facilitator of Larimer County Women of the Year program. Her upcoming book, Prozac and Poverty, tells her story growing up in poverty in the Denver area, offering life-changing, actionable steps for readers to improve their circumstances beyond trauma, privilege, and other systems of oppression. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to Chrysta Bairre.
So as you can see, I don't have a PowerPoint or any handouts because I really like to be present to who's in the room and what you're dealing with today. I was sitting in a room similar to this, listening to a speaker at the front of the room, when I had a feeling that I'd had many times before. That feeling of frustration and self-doubt, feeling like somehow I didn't belong in that room, feeling like somehow I wasn't good enough. I was listening to a speaker talk about having won this World Champion Public Speaking Award. And he was presenting this topic from the perspective of, if I did it, anyone can do it. How many times have you sat in a room or read a book and you listened to someone say, if I did it, anyone can do it? And this didn't leave me feeling motivated. It left me feeling really frustrated. Because I didn't have the same opportunities that this presenter had. I grew up here in the Denver area. Most of my childhood, I lived in poverty. There was pretty severe mental illness in my family, and things were not stable. They were not safe. We weren't just poor, we were below the poverty line. We received public assistance and all of the fun social things that come with that. I got made fun of at school. Even the people who came to help to bring us baskets of food or clothes in the winter, whatever that looked like, would look down on us. And I learned to be ashamed of where I came from. But I wasn't going to stay in that situation. I knew that I wasn't, and I made a decision when I was 8 years old that I was going to create something better for myself, better than the life that I had just because of the family I was born into. And from that moment, I started seeking out any kind of opportunity to better my situation, to better myself. And it wasn't easy, and it took a really long time. The fact that I'm standing in front of you right now, sharing this information with you, speaks to the fact that right now I am privileged, or I wouldn't be able to be here. So that feeling that I had in that room with that speaker one day, it made a lot more sense to me when I came across this 2017 study that was done on underprivileged students. And what they found was that when these underprivileged students were told, life is fair, and you have the same opportunities as your peers, these students internalized that, and they assumed that if they were not able to achieve the same things that their peers were able to achieve, something was wrong with them. That's how they took that information. Something is wrong with me. They saw decreased confidence and an increase in risky behaviors. And a lot of these students who were told life is fair, when they had very real barriers in the way, they just stopped trying to succeed. And when I read this study, it was so fascinating, and that's when I knew that as the person who has sat in those rooms and felt frustrated with the person at the front of the room speaking from a place of privilege, that feeling of, I blamed myself. I always thought there was something wrong with me. I didn't assume that it was the system, that it was the system of oppression. I didn't assume that it was my circumstances. I thought it was me. And that's the reason I feel that this topic is so important to talk about and talk openly about. We're not always aware that the reason we're not achieving those same results is because the odds are stacked against us. Anyone else is like a personal development book junkie? Yeah. And realizing that so much of the information that's shared about how to improve your situation and better your life is shared from a perspective of privilege. Because the person sharing that information would not have that platform if they were not privileged. And I thought, how frustrating is that? And I really wanted to be in this world where we stopped looking at people as experts and we started looking for people who are information leaders, who can separate their privilege from the information and the ideas and knowledge that they have to share, so that they can reach a wider audience. And so I want to talk about some ways that we can shift that dynamic, and you as an individual can show up differently in the world. You can show up differently as someone who's aware and has this consciousness around this issue. And that when you seek to help others, when you seek to make lives better, that you're actually having a greater impact than you would otherwise. Because do you only want to make the lives better of other people who are privileged? I mean, certainly they deserve some amount of help, but what if you could reach a much wider audience and change the situation for many, many more people? Is that what you want? I know it's definitely what I want. And so I have some friends that I would like just rant about this topic to. And eventually I decided I needed to write a book about it. But the book is not necessarily about this topic as a whole. It's a book written directly for people who have overcome some kind of challenge, some lack of privilege, some trauma, something like that, and how they can interact differently with the information that they're hearing and improve their situation. Because I want to hear from more and more people who are speaking from that perspective, who are acknowledging that privilege is an issue and that it matters, and then saying, now what can you do? So let's talk about how you can shift that and what you can do differently if you want to show up differently in the world. And the first thing that I want to talk about is meeting people that are different than you. Like you said, most of us, like tons and tons of studies will show that we're most comfortable with people who are like us. And this is a huge mistake that employers make, is like hiring only people that are like them. Whereas all of these studies show that when you have more diversity in your organization, it's actually a stronger organization. But we're going to be the most comfortable with people who are like us. And what I encourage you to do is educate yourself and engage people who are different from you in conversations, so that you can find out what it's actually like for them. And so that you realize when you're sharing knowledge and information, that you have some perspectives other than your own to consider. The internet. And if you go out and you look for blogs, or you follow people on Twitter, or you read articles from other perspectives, you might get some real insights into what the situation can be like for other people. And I heard the suggestion once that those articles that you tend to ignore on Facebook because you're just like, that's not for me, like start reading some of those. Because you probably ignore them because it's a viewpoint that's different than your own. And what if you just decided to be open to learning what someone else's viewpoint is and like clicked on one of them just to see what it says? And like, what can I learn about this person from reading this? I want to talk about when you're sharing your knowledge and information, making it relatable to a greater audience. And it shouldn't necessarily be the audience's responsibility to relate the information to themselves. Do you agree with that? I mean, unless you want to, that's how you choose to go about, and you're like, I don't care about reaching people who aren't like me, but you probably wouldn't be here in this room today if that were true, right? And so, take that little extra step to make sure that it's something that they can relate to and that they know what they can do. So there's a couple ways you can do that. Like, you might give them some examples. If you're sharing information, you might say, and here's 3 ways that you can use this. And making sure that those 3 ways are accessible to the audience that you want to reach. At least one of them is accessible to, right, a wider audience. Or even this exercise like we did today, because I put you in the position of thinking about it and talking with other people and determining how this applies to you. Rather than just standing in front of the room and telling you what you need to do and then sending you off on your own, and like maybe there's some people in the room that are like, I wouldn't really know how to go about that. But we're using the group knowledge and group consciousness to help each other figure that out. And so really making it clear how everyone can do it, or as many people as possible. Because if you're privileged enough to stand at the front of the room, or to write a book, or to be sharing knowledge and information with people, then this is a great opportunity for you to help people who have less privilege than you by making sure it's accessible as much as you can. Now, this is a little bold, and not everyone's going to want to do this or feel comfortable doing it, but it can be bold to acknowledge your privilege, or at the very least, acknowledge the circumstances from which you're sharing this information. Because that can give people the ability to discern if it doesn't relate to them and go, oh, I know why this doesn't relate to me. Because I don't share this particular experience or background or whatever the thing is. When you can walk into a room and not apologize for who you are, like, that's a powerful statement. And that's not always with words even, right? We apologize for who we are in a variety of ways, like body language is a huge one. And the last point I wanted to share with you how I think that we can really change the dynamic of privilege and really allowing our knowledge and information to reach a greater audience is to allow for people to have an experience different than ours. Just like I've done. To ask people questions and say things like, do you agree? Is that what you've experienced as well? Because when you can open that door, that you're not the expert standing at the front of the room telling you what you don't know, especially as it relates to your very own situation, guess what? You know better than I do about your situation. Because it's such a simple and easy way to give people the opportunity, unlike the students in the study who are told life is fair and you have the same opportunities as everyone else, and then they're not achieving the same results and they're thinking something is wrong with me. But simply by asking that question, sometimes it just opens that door for someone to make that acknowledgement for themselves. Oh, it isn't that way for me. Actually, it's different. And that can be a great starting point to have a conversation with someone who has a different background than you. So I think that's all the time we have for today, so I'll turn it back over.